Pemaquid Communications, innovative, accessible web design and development from offices in Portland, Maine. On the web at pemaquid.com.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment where we keep our guests around from the broadcast show for a little additional conversation and even some more candid conversation about the issues. Today we're talking about exports, Maine exports, and what a significant year 2010 in particular was. With us today we have Janine Cary, president of the Maine International Trade Center, and John Stankiewicz, COO of Tex Industries, offices in Portland and plant in North Monmouth, right?
Correct.
Good, good. All right, so let's go back to, I'm going to come back to Janine, to you.
Sure.
Talk about emerging markets. I mean, we know that what the kind of leaders have been in Maine in terms of exports, but what are the emerging things that are happening too? And anything, what surprised you last year in terms of where we were exporting?
I would say that the biggest surprise were some of the increases in both the medical products industry and also pharmaceuticals. Yeah, really? Because we've had developments over the years, but they haven't always traditionally been our strong leaders. And really, I think between 40 and 70% increases in those sectors.
And Idexx is on the pharmaceuticals. That's the big driver?
That's the big driver for sure on the pharmaceuticals because it's veterinary products, so you can tag that pretty quickly. There may be some other smaller companies involved too, but there was a recent stat of them having almost 5,000 employees now, which really I think surprises a lot of people when they see how developed they are globally. So definitely on veterinary, a lot of our biotech companies that are producing reagents, we started seeing those numbers coming up. And one thing that's shifted over kind of interesting on the medical product side, we're developing some really good niches in terms of optics for medical products, things that are used in endoscopies and basically a lot of surgical usages.
Devices that we manufacture here? Or?
Parts of devices, yes.
Components.
Components, basically. And started seeing those pop up. We have a lot of traditional industry people, like, for example, hardwood products that became Puritan Medical, that were started with like very simple tongue devices, tongue depressors, and now are getting into very sophisticated again, products used in medical procedures and that are returning a very high value, and that's what we're always looking for, is how do we add value, how do we go global, how do we develop more overseas.
Great. Well, I just can't say enough about how surprising, how great that is. I mean, the amount of exports, and I like that second in growth, too. That was significant to me, I think, and it shows that there's really something happening here, John, I'm going to get back to you, too. And so tell us from that kind of practical, boots-on-the-ground level, what are you guys up against when it comes to exporting? What are the roadblocks, and what are the challenges, I guess, to expanding your exports?
Yep. Fortunately, we've been in the export and the global markets for a long time now.
And imports, too. Talk about
and
that.
Imports.
You both,
And because of the exports, we've been able to leverage that on the import side as well. Over 35% of our sales are going out to global customers.
Okay.
We service over 35 countries throughout the world. And again, our product lines, whether it's the aerospace industry, whether it's the ballistic one, whether it's the filtration, we are selling into Central and South America. We're selling into the Far East, obviously into Europe. The challenges are pretty typical. It is the language barrier. It is the cultures that are involved around doing business. It's getting caught in a coup in Thailand.
Hate it when that happens.
That's a difficult one, although they're very civilized.
How'd you plan that in your business model?
They're civilized in their coups, to be quite honest.
Good, that's good to know.
Which did help a little bit. But all of those, and then there is just how you do business here. Whether it is, and for us it's become rather normal, but letter of credits and banking facilities where here we may have asset-based lending, they'll have trust receipts and packing credits, just different animals, and understanding how the banks work there and not saying, well, the roadmap that we used here, we can just take over and apply there. And that's where you get in a lot of trouble, and I think a lot of people do that.
And that's where MITC comes in. You were talking about those kind of calls for assistance. especially small businesses who are getting ready to move into this. They've found a new market niche, but man, there's so many traps. You could lose your shirt if you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So they should call you, right?
That's right.
Okay,
They
good.
should.
Good.
And the help that they've provided on some of those things. And then on the advantage side is dealing in the global market, then the recession that hit the U.S. was mitigated by our ability to sell into some of these areas that were growing, India, China, those type of things. So it offset it a little bit, so it kind of, like I said, mitigated some of the impacts.
So during the recession, what impact?
Well, we struggled. We struggled like a lot of people did, but it wasn't as bad. Our U.S. market dropped more than some of the Far East stuff.
To diversify in your markets, I guess.
Absolutely.
And the more you understand the global market, the more you're willing to say, I'm not going to put my head in the sand and say, it's got to. The more you do that, the more you understand it. And we now import, like I said, wool from New Zealand. We get nylon from Pakistan. We get carbon fibers from Austria, Germany. And we're fluent in those type of discussions on how credit terms work, how deliveries work, all of those type of things, which are a real challenge. And that's where, like you said, you can get stuck to where it either costs you significantly or you can't do it.
Two questions. You're making me think about that, all this stuff that's coming in and going out.
Right.
Imports and exports. How are we doing with that? Are our ports handling it? Are we growing at the level we need to have? I know Esport's doing some expansions too.
Absolutely.
So, Janine, talk about that.
Well,
and what else do we need to do to make it even better?
Sure. There are estimates that are about 181,000 jobs in Maine that are dependent on import, exports, and foreign investment. On the port side, I think that we've done a okay job. What was really lacking was container service again on the all-water service.
Right.
We lost that for a while. My understanding it's coming back in June, which I think, and to a much better facility than once was. We have been investing in our ports, significant investments in Eastport, significant investments in Port of Portland, and some in Searsport had been actually changing over a lot, for example, for a lot of the wind energy.
Right.
Much of that came through Searsport, and they had accommodated that. So they've been quite nimble in terms of, going after some of these changing needs in terms of imports and exports. Can we do a better job? Always, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to see this as the Northeast hub. What happened in 2009 is it really set trade back worldwide.
It would cut your costs. If this becomes a hub, they're shipping in even more stuff here to ship it out to the rest, but you get the benefit of it by having a lower cost at your
Absolutely.
shipping department.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the time that we spend in Boston or in LA for clearing customs, it costs us more to ship a product from Maine to Arizona than it does to ship it from a port to China.
Is that right?
More expensive. And if we
That's
could have a
interesting.
port in Portland or Eastport, whatever, would significantly reduce cost.
That was the soundbite for this show,
delivery.
by the way. In case you missed that, that's the soundbite for this show. We
There
got
you
little
go.
soundbites, and that's going to be one of the ones, I'm sure. Okay, two final things, and I got to wrap up. Trade missions. Are they still good, important? Do we want to do them?
I think they're incredibly important, particularly
Return on
for
investment, good?
Yep, we had in the last fiscal year the largest results from trade missions ever. I think we did 4 missions in total, including trade shows overseas, and we had about $23 million of reported sales by the companies that went on them.
Are those all privately funded now, or is the state involved in? And what's the new administration's take on this stuff?
They are actually, trade missions themselves are almost always funded privately, except if sometimes we get grant opportunities. We've had grants in the past from like Maine MEP, and actually we're going after an SBA grant that might really help out small businesses. But no, I think that they're tremendously important in terms of getting particularly the small and medium-sized companies overseas, sometimes working cooperatively so we look like we have a little bit more substance, and they don't necessarily know that's all the 5 of one sector that we have in the state.
They brought everyone.
Exactly. But no, they've been...
this isn't a delegation. This is all of them.
Yeah, exactly. But they've been really successful, and we've actually are getting more and more demand to do more.
Good. Last question for both of you. So, another 41% this year, you think? What can I put you down for?
Oh,
Seriously, what's your prediction for 2011? How's it looking now?
I'd say that right now we only have the January numbers in,
Yeah.
so we don't have enough to go off of. Although I can say the semiconductors came out strong.
Good.
That first January. We also had a lot of strength in the aerospace sector in parts for aerospace. So I'm hopeful. A lot's going to depend on what's going on with these global markets,
Yep.
with the situation in the Middle East,
Yeah.
North Africa,
Yeah.
Japan. How is that going to affect some of the supply chain? I was talking to somebody this morning that gets specific fibers out of there that said...
From Japan?
Yeah, they're not sure how this is going to affect their production
Yep.
here, so
Yeah.
it goes both ways on the import and export side. I would say if we can even get modest gains this year of 10% and 20%, I think that would be a very good sign after the big jump of last
year.
Yeah.
That'd be great. How about for Tex Tech in
I think
particular?
clearly our sales were up 40% 09 to 2010.
Great.
We have projected another 14% increase, and we are through March now, and we're on target for that. So about a 14% increase.
Very good.
The biggest challenge is the commodity pricing of the materials, whether it's cotton, nylon,
Yep.
the oil prices. That's going to be our biggest challenge.
Because that
for
has that
11.
ripple effect worldwide
Absolutely.
that it ends up at your door.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
But very, very optimistic and positive going
Terrific.
forward.
Great. Thank you. This was great. I appreciate it. And we're going to have you back we'll be back about this time next year to look at the numbers again.
Okay.
Here we go. And they'll
Sounds
hold
good.
us to those numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
Fair
Last
enough.
year
I'm
you
used to
said.
that.
That's right. Oh, we do that. Thanks a lot.
Very
Thank
good.
you.